So this video is going to be, I guess, what I'm going to call Inside the Mind of a True Believer. And it's really just kind of something I've thought about on a couple of occasions. And what it really goes back to is a conversation that I had with my dad, which was regarding the conflict in Israel between the Islamic side and the Jewish side, and a statement that he made that just kind of clicked for me was that essentially, I'm paraphrasing right now, but essentially what he was saying is, why can't everybody just stop killing each other over what they believe? And this is one of those things that sounds very nice in theory, but it is not a thing that can ever actually happen simply because of what some people believe. So, and this is something that I think is actually very difficult for an atheist to understand, is just the idea that what it is to believe that you are commanded by God to do something. Now, I will begin this by saying that I do believe that anyone who actually goes out and says that they are killing someone or torturing someone or, terrorism or anything like that, and saying that they're doing that because God told them to, I believe that those people are either liars or deceived. There's not really any other option in my mind for this. Which, of course, ultimately comes down to what I believe that God has called us to do and how He has called us to live. Specifically in that, in the words of Jesus, the Son of Man did not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. And in the same fashion, we are called to live as Christ did, and He never killed a single person. So, essentially, anyone who goes out and says that they're killing in the name of God is either a liar or is deceived. However, I can infer and extrapolate from that, because that is based on a belief of what God has commanded us to do. I can extrapolate that into a sort of understanding of the mindset of a person who truly believes that they have been commanded by God to kill or to terrorize or to do something like that. Okay, like it makes sense. Excuse me. And the thing that just makes this very difficult, I think, for an atheist to comprehend is that, just taking the two sides of the Jerusalem issue, from the Jewish perspective, and I will say this is the one that I believe to be the correct perspective, Jerusalem is the city of God. This is the place where God's temple was built in the days of King Solomon, and it was rebuilt after it was destroyed, and it was destroyed again in accordance with the prophecy spoken by Jesus. But this still is the land that God has given to Israel, the people, the land of Israel God gave to the people of Israel. And this is the city that God has chosen to set His name there. And ultimately, they really believe it. Like, they actually believe not only do they have the true faith, but that God has chosen to set His name there, and the place where the Dome of the Rock is now is where God's temple is meant to actually be built. So when they look at the Dome of the Rock, I can infer that what they are really seeing is essentially some kind of an abomination. It is the temple of an idol that has been placed where the temple of God is meant to be. This is the kind of thing that, to a devout person, is the worst kind of sacrilege. And there is also the belief and understanding that ultimately God will give the whole of that land to his people in accordance with his promises. God does not lie. And then you have the other side of the coin. You have the Islamic belief that Temple Mount, or the Dome of the Rock, where they have that thing, is actually a place that was given to Islam. It was given, like Muhammad, I think, saw it in a vision or a dream or something like that, but ultimately they believe that it is a place that is sacred to God, but they have a very different conception of God, and they believe that the Jewish people and the Jewish faith are in fact deceivers who are attempting to pollute God's holy place, and who are interlopers. They don't belong there, and it is their sacred duty to drive them out, and in a lot of cases, to kill them. There are in fact many who will preach, many imams in the Muslim world that will preach that the fact that the Jewish people are actually gathered together in the nation of Israel is so that the Muslims will be able, in one stroke, to destroy them all and to kill them. And this is why you get chants, for example, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, because they believe that the entire nation of Israel is Palestine, and they want to burn it all to the ground and take it over. And when I say burn it all to the ground, I will point you to Gaza, because the Jewish forces retreated. They left behind actually quite a significant infrastructure, which then you got the Palestinian groups would come in, and they burned down greenhouses, they burned down infrastructure, they blew up buildings, all of which had just been ceded to them. Because I suppose it was Jews who had built them or something like that. That part I don't entirely understand. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But, so here's what I'm saying. To really believe that God, the creator of the universe, has commanded you to do something, to not do it is to go against the creator of the universe, who has the power over not just your life in this world, but also over your soul. It is he who made you, and he who provides everything that you have, and from him proceed all things. So ultimately, if he tells you to do something, by definition it's right, first off. And second off, to go against it is, in fact, an unconscionable evil. And this fact is one of the main tenets of Christianity, of course, is we have all at some point gone against what God wanted us to do, and this is sin. But all sin is an unconscionable evil. In the Old Testament it says of the law, "Cursed is every man who lives not by all the words of this book of the law to do them." So anybody who breaks even the smallest commandment of the law is under the curse of the law, because they did not proceed to do all the words of the book of the law. And in fact, there is no one who keeps that law, so everyone is under the curse of the law. And this is why sin is such a horrible problem, because even the smallest sin is unconscionable. It is to go against the will of perfect righteousness. It's to go against the will of God. And this is why Christ died for us, because we have all committed something utterly unconscionable, utterly evil. Even if we didn't see it that way at the time, it was. And somebody has to pay the price. Ultimately, I mean, a good example. If you look at the national debt of the United States, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And then you look at other countries, like China, I think also has a very serious debt. Just so many countries, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. Who's going to pay it off? I mean, the debt isn't just going to go away. And to give an example of what would happen if we tried to just decide that the debt doesn't exist anymore, Germany, at the end of World War I, was slapped with such enormous war debts. And then they got this bright idea that they were just going to print a whole lot of money to pay off their debt. And then you needed a wheelbarrow of cash to buy a loaf of bread. Somebody has to pay the debt. The debt's there. I mean, the offense has been made. Somebody had to pay the price. And Jesus came to do that for us. But our debt is enormous. And anyone who attempts to pay it himself is going to find that they actually can't even start. Because we don't have anything that we didn't receive. So we have nothing of our own, and no righteousness of our own with which to pay this debt. All we have is the debt. We have the debt that we cannot pay. But all things belong to God. And so he came to pay our debt for us, to anyone who would receive him, so that we could have life and be free from this debt. I don't really know entirely where this video is going. It just... I suppose the question of why can people not kill each other, or I say, why can't people not kill each other over the things that they believe? And the simple fact of the matter is, because they actually believe it, and this is something that is very difficult for an atheist to understand, because the atheist does not believe effectively anything. Most atheists will tell you that. They have no faith of any kind. And to a very large extent, I can accept that. I think that's actually true. But the problem that you're going to run into, if you are a person who does not believe anything, in a world that is mostly populated by people who believe something, you will not be able to understand the vast majority of not just human history, but the population of the people around you. And the things that people will do, and the actions that many countries will take, many organizations will take, and just the turning of the wheel of history will be opaque to you, because you do not believe anything. So you cannot understand what it is to actually, truly believe. And I'm not 100% sure exactly how to express this, but I suppose ultimately the thing that I'm saying, or the challenge that I would make to any atheist who watches this video would ultimately be to try to get inside the mind of a true believer. And what I mean by that is, because I will fully acknowledge, and we all know, that there are these people who sort of say that they believe something and then they don't actually believe it. And you can tell just by the way that they're acting. Like, for example, someone who claims to be, you could have someone who claims to be a Christian, but then they do absolutely nothing that actually appears to mean that they believe that. They never pray, they don't actually read the Bible, they don't obey any of the commandments of the Bible, they just say that they're a Christian. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, and I acknowledge that actually probably quite a few more atheists, especially in America, than Christians have actually read the Bible. But if you're an atheist, look at what a Christian is actually supposed to be, and then try to get inside that mindset. That is how you will be able to actually understand why the world is the way that it is. If you meditate on God's Word in this way, then everything about life actually will begin to become clear. It will begin to make sense. And, the arc of history will become crystal clear in a lot of ways. And you will be able to see somewhat dimly, admittedly, but you will be able to see somewhat of the path that the future will take. And you'll be able to know really where you stand. So I would just challenge you. Read the Bible, and don't try to understand it as you would understand it, as you, an atheist, would understand it. Read it as a Christian would read it. Read it as a believer would read it. And then it will actually make sense. A good example of this is if I were to read a book as a critic would read a book, deconstructing whether they are using the right plot device or whether they're doing good character development or just trying to split every possible hair that I was actually capable of splitting. That book is going to mean something phenomenally different to me than if I read it like an average reader is going to read it. And you can look at things like the Academy Awards and all this stuff where if you'll actually look at, and this is actually mildly hilarious actually, I had heard that in the Academy Awards they're now introducing a new category, which is the movies that the public actually liked and that did really well at the box office. So what ultimately that means is, though, that these people are spending a whole lot of time giving awards to movies that either nobody watched or nobody liked. And now they're finally deciding that they're going to add in this other one, this new category, that is the movies that people actually watched, and the movies that people actually enjoyed, and the movies that the user, or I'm thinking video games on that one, but the movies that the viewers actually enjoyed, as opposed to whether the critics enjoyed them. And I guess what I'm saying is, when you read it as a critic, when you read the Bible as a critic, you will not actually see what it is trying to say. When you read it as a believer would read it, then you can see the truth. If anyone is seeking the truth in God's Word, then God will reveal it to them. I will confess that the Bible was utterly opaque to me before I actually became a Christian. But it isn't anymore. This is just something for you to think about. Have a good night.